All right, on to Tirreno Adriatico. We didn't do a preview because we're flat out, in case you hadn't noticed the amount of content we're producing. But just a quick, yeah, but just a quick overview of this absolutely stacked field at Tirreno Adriatico. Van der Poel here for Alpes and Phoenix, but apparently they're sprinting for Tim Merlier. As you deserve, Citroën has brought their mixed squad, Cher and Van Avermaet, Vendrame. Team Bike Exchange have Simon Yates for GC, as well as Luka Mezgec for the sprints. Astana Premier Tech have, I don't really know what they're doing here. Aram Baru and Gorka Izagirre maybe for stage wins, and Fulsang obviously. Is he going for GC anymore? I don't know what Fulsang's doing. I remember he said he's not going for GC anymore. Maybe that was just Grand Tours. Bahrain victorious, Landa, Bilbao, Fred Wright, pretty decent sprinter. So Landa's their GC man. Bora Hansgrohe got Sagan here. I thought that was a typo the other day. Sagan recovered from COVID, obviously. He was up there in the sprint. Good to see. They also have Conrad maybe for GC. Cofidis Viviani looked good at the UAE Tour. Quickstep got Alaphilippe, Almeida, Askren, Ballerini stacked. Well, I was going to say Stibar, but I said stacked anyway. But they also got Alvaro Hodge. We'll get to that in a second. Bit of drama there. EF Education, Nippo, Igita, Simon Kerr, Bettiol. Who else? Zakharin for Gazprom, Pinot for Groupama. Ineos have brought the most obscene team I have ever seen in a one-week race. Bernal, Castroviejo, Ganna, Kwiatkowski, Puccio, Sivakov, Thomas. What the fuck is that? Like, that is a Tour de France level squad or Giro squad. That's outrageous. Bernal for GC, obviously, and Thomas too, I guess. Probably not. Van Aert for Jumbo-Visma, Foss maybe for GC, but mainly a train for Van Aert. Wellens and Ewan for Lotto Soudal, Soler for Movistar, Quintana for Arkea Samsic, Bardet. It's just a crazy field. Pozzovivo, Pogacar. I'm now getting down to UAE team. It's Pogacar, Gaviria, mixed lead out and GC team, and Nibali, Ciccone, Moschetti, Quinn Simmons for Trek Segafredo. I've just spoken a lot about that start list, Benji. Are you shook by how good that start list is? And why is this Tirreno start list so strong?
Like, it's genuinely insane, and you don't usually see this too much because I think that it's usually more evenly spread between Paris-Nice and Tirreno, and I think the only real person that is missing to make it real top-notch is Roglic, who's at Paris-Nice, so I think Tirreno's over the years proving much more interesting than Paris-Nice for me personally. I have always cared more about Tirreno in the last, I think, 10 years. I think the last one I really cared about GC a lot in Paris-Nice, who was going to win that and such, was the one that Contador won. So you can already imagine it's a few years ago. But I think it also was a much harder climbing parkour in the past. Like a good 13 years ago or something, it was more mountainous to my knowledge. And I feel like Paris-Nice has moved into a bit more of a hilly terrain, while Tirreno has done a similar type thing. So the parkours are pretty similar in both. I think that Tirreno's better for the sprinters though. And that displays by the fact that you've got just much more flat sprints here than in Paris-Nice, I'd say. And I think that now the difference is more between what region a rider is already in. Like people were in Strade and such. I don't think they go home from Strade and then go back to Tirreno and afterwards go back home and then go back to Milano Sanremo. I think that's also one of the reasons that a lot of people go to Tirreno now to prep for Milano Sanremo because they're already in that region. And yeah.
COVID as well.
Yep.
You don't want to be going between traveling if you don't need to. But today's stage, as Benji mentioned, should have been a sprint stage, 156 Ks. It had 3 climbs, circuits. The Pitordo climb, 2.7 Ks at 7.5%, but that was in the first 64 Ks. Then it was pancake flat for the next 90 Ks or 100 Ks even at the crest of the final climb. And there was an intermediate sprint, 107 Ks in. But apart from that, they were on the coast for a flat sprint finish. Sprinters we got here, Ewan, Merlier, Gaviria for UAE, Wout van Aert for Jumbo-Visma with a train actually today. Probably I'd say a slightly weaker sprint field than at Paris-Nice. Ballerini and Hodge for De Koning Quickstep and Viviani for for Covidis and Sagan for Bora. But I got to admit, we joined this pretty late because we were watching Paris-Nice, and this came to last 4 kilometers. But did anything interesting happen in the first 150 Ks of this stage, Benji? Because it looked like it was a formality sprint up to that point to me.
Very good question. I started watching with about 3.5 kilometers to go, so I can't tell you. So let's head straight for the sprint. I think the teams that we were focusing on to kind of lead stuff out, I was looking forward to see if Jumbo was going to set up a train for Van Aert, because Van Aert would get another opportunity for sprinting. Before this stage, he had a 3 out of 5 win rate to the sprints he rode, because he won 2 sprints at the Tour de France of the 3 he rode. He won a sprint at Paris-Nice. No, Dauphiné, last year. He podiumed Milano-Torino, so that's 3 victories out of the 5 sprints he rode before this. So I was looking forward whether he was going to extend that percentage and make that a better ratio, because if you can keep that up, that's one of the best ratios of a sprinter at the moment up there. And I was looking forward to see if Jumbo would set something up. They eventually did set something up. Jumbo was moving to the front on the left side of the road with a 3-4 rider train. One by one, they kept, spending their riders. Some weird stuff was happening on the left side of the road, where I think Van der Poel was trying to bring Merlier to the front, but then Merlier lost his wheel, and then Van der Poel was like 20 meters ahead of everybody, except for like the people that were on the left side of the road, and Merlier was nowhere near Van der Poel, so Van der Poel had to go back to Merlier and try and find him again. I don't think Van der Poel is good at leading out someone, or at least not good at bringing someone to the front.
We found what he's not good at.
Losing.
We saw this in Tirreno. We saw it in Tirreno last year, Benji. Remember in Tirreno last year when he would like surge way like so hard out of corners and gap Merlier off the wheel. Now maybe Merlier is not good enough in a stacked World Tour sprint, but I think Van der Poel's actually not a great lead out man, because he would do like 1400 watts for 5 seconds, drop his team, be on the wrong side of the road on his own, look back and like, oh no, where is everyone? Merlier's right at the back, being like, what the hell, man? Then he'd drift back and rinse and repeat. So Alpecin they'd been at the front chasing a lot today. Merlier's had a good start to the season up north. And yeah, he was way too deep, Merlier. So he pretty much didn't have a chance with 1K to go. Jumbo-Visma, as Benji said, was set up, but then they were spending riders quickly, and eventually they dropped Wout van Aert off or ran out of steam, and basically they were letting Wout van Aert look after himself. So he slid onto the Gaviria train, which had Recese, Ivo Oliveira, I think, was in there as well. So I think it was Oliveira and then, Recese. He slid onto that train on the left-hand side. Wout van Aert. It was different to the Paris-Nice sprints, Benji. I was thinking, as I was watching it overhead, I was like, if this was the Paris-Nice sprint and Wout van Aert was trying to slip onto Gaviria's wheel here, he would cop a heavy shoulder. I can't remember who was on his wheel. Now, maybe it's a respect thing with Wout van Aert. He's always a big guy, but it's a pretty clean sprint for what could have been a tricky finish. Ballerini and Hodge, I couldn't tell which one was which. They were both just together on the right-hand side for Quick Step. They were struggling to move up. They were on the slower right-hand side. This is from, as you look at it, overhead. Ewan was in the middle with clear air to his right, which was quite good. I thought at 500 it looked okay for Ewan. Wout van Aert's fourth wheel now. Rechese's starting to pull for Gaviria on the left-hand side. Gaviria second wheel. Ewan's got De Bois trying to move up through the middle, and De Bois is trying to sprint to the right-hand side, but De Bois just wasn't. It's like in the UAE Tour, Benji. He's like trying, but he can't make a difference, and he's not going quicker than Rechese, so he couldn't move Ewan up. Rechese runs out of steam, and I swear it's like 275 meters to go, and Wout van Aert just launches off Gaviria's wheel before Gaviria can sprint on the barrier side to Rechese's left. So Rechese's obviously going to do his lead out and then leave a small gap for Gaviria to sprint through on his left, just like we saw Merckx and Bennett do at the UAE Tour. But Gaviria, Wout van Aert had already jumped to the right-hand side. He's got a gap then off, well, Gaviria can't, he was going the other way. Ewan wasn't on Wout van Aert's wheel, so Wout van Aert's initial kick has gapped, I think, even other lead-out men, and then Ewan, who'd followed De Bois, has to start sprinting into air, basically, at that point as well. And Gaviria comes on the left-hand side, gets into Wout van Aert's slipstream, which prevents Ewan getting Wout van Aert's slipstream from 125 to 50 to go. Ewan eventually outkicks Gaviria, but barely gets any Wout van Aert slipstream. Tries to come around Wout van Aert's right-hand side. Wout van Aert's been sprinting for what feels like 30 seconds. Sprints in a straight line. Got to respect fair play from Wout van Aert, even though he knew Ewan was coming hard to his right, and Wout van Aert maintains it to the line. How did that make you feel, Benji, as a Wout van Aert super fan?
As a Wout van Aert super fan. Well, I'm just going to debunk that first. I'm not a Wout van Aert super fan because I'm going to say something. Okay. I'm apparently a Wout van Aert super fan now, but I think that Wout van Aert is one of the 3 best sprinters in the world.
I agree.
Okay. I'm glad that's not a super fan take anymore.
What do you
I think.
define as a sprint, though? What's a sprint?
What's a sprint?
This is very existential question.
A sprint is when I don't know. When they all ride to the finish line very fast.
Because I think in Champs-Élysées, it's between Ewan and Bennett. If they both get a lead out on either side of the road and they get dropped off at 100, I think it's 50-50. But I think they're going to beat Wout van Aert in that situation. I think at Paris Stage 1, I think Wout van Aert's the best, just about, with an uphill finish. I think a sprint that has a few climbs before it, he's the best. A sprint after the Poggio, he's better than Ewan and Bennett. So it depends what is a sprint. Do you mean just like a traditional bunch sprint like we saw at Tirreno?
Yeah, I'm saying a traditional bunch sprint like we see in Tirreno and Tirreno last year as well. I believe that is in the top 3. I can't compare him to both Bennett and Ewan because we haven't seen him sprint against all too frequently because he's only sprinted 6 times in the last year and he won 4 of those at 66%. His win to sprint ratio is the highest of every single sprinter in the world. And he's not even allowed to sprint half the time.
I'm sorry for hitting you with the Søren Kierkegaard existentialism questions so late in the evening, but yeah, I agree. Even with like a pure mass sprint, I think Wout van Aert is up there because he got a bit of a lead out today, and it allowed him to get onto Gaviria's wheel. But you don't think that, like, do you think he's just way more consistent than Case Bowl, riders like that, and Mads Pedersen seconds at Paris-Nice? I think Wout van Aert, yeah, you just got to look at the ratio of the sprints he does contest, and they're always at the top level too. Like, what if he got sent to a lot of like pro races or smaller stage races? He would be destroying them as well. I think he's better than Merlier, who's been looking good at those, Le Samin style races too. But anyway, the results: Van Aert first, Ewan second, Gaviria third, Van Drame fourth. Nice result for him.
Yeah.
Luca Mezgec 5th, Merlier 6th. Get this: Hodge 7th, Ballerini 8th. They finished next to each other. Ivan Garcia Cortina 9th and Hugo Hofstetter 10th. Sagan in the group 11th. I think that's good to see from Sagan, just up there being competitive, straight after COVID. I think that's really encouraging. I loved his results at Tirreno in the last decade. Quick step, Benji. What the fuck are they doing sprinting for Hodge, not Ballerini, after Ballerini's season so far?
Yeah, I don't get it. I really don't get it. Hodge for 2 years has not shown anything after that crash. He had the injury, he had the surgery last year, also leading into that, or 2019 already, the surgery after that crash. I don't know whether it was last year or 2 years ago. No, I don't remember. My memory is fading, man. But I think it's pretty clear that Ballerini is a good sprinter now. And I think Hodge is not only not achieving anything, he's basically countering the abilities of the team here by being in the team, which is obviously not really Hodge's fault. The DS shouldn't have chosen to let him also sprint. They should have chosen who to go for. And additionally, I don't think Hodge at the moment deserves to be in this race. I believe that Cavendish deserves more to be in Tirreno from his capabilities of the last year.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they got to let Hodge sprint for something. Like, he's in a contract year. He's a young guy. They got to let him try and prove
Brussels
something.
Cycling Classic or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but the point is, which Benji's trying to make, Tirreno Adriatico World Tour level stage race with Ballerini in the team is not the place to be letting people try or get back to form. I think
Yeah.
there's plenty of Belgian races and 1-1, 2-1 races where you can go and try and get your eye back in. I think they'll ride for Ballerini, I think, for the rest of the race. I'd be
I hope
very
so.
surprised if they didn't. But yeah, Tirreno Adriatico bunch sprint, Wout van Aert first. He takes the bonus seconds, Benji. Now Jumbo Visma have been rubbishing the notion that he can compete for GC at Tirreno because they called him overweight in the media, and they said, oh, he's not in good condition for GC. He's been doing other he's coming off altitude. He's 4 seconds, ahead of the GC guys. He's got a 10-second lead already because obviously Ewan probably won't be up there on GC. So 10-second lead. Tomorrow, Benji, look at this finish. We got 211 kilometer stage, 201 kilometer stage. Flat for the first 100 or 90 Ks, then a few rollers, nothing too crazy. I think they got the Poggio alla Croce, 3.5 Ks at 7%. I don't think that should worry Van Aert too much. And then the final climb to Chiusdino is 7.5 Ks at 3.5%. That is like it just gets steeper every single kilometer. First case 2%, second case 3%, third case 3%, fourth case 3%, then it's 3.5%, 4.3%, 5.3% in the last K, and then the last, I think, 500 meters is about 5% as well. So, Wout van Aert's the favorite tomorrow.
Van der Poel?
Pardon?
Van der Poel?
Oh, yeah, he's pretty good.
He's pretty good.
What sort of finish does this? This is like quite a tricky one that I don't think we've previewed before, Benji.
I love it.
A long false flat drag that continually gets harder. And it's like if they ride it really easy at the start, it will change completely who can be there at the finish. Now, I don't think Ewan or Gaviria will be there. But what about Vendrame, Benji? What about Ballerini? It's probably
Ballerini
not Merlier.
could do this. I think Ballerini could genuinely do this. I think Ballerini was up there with the moment that Van Aert made his first move in Strade Bianche. Then Ballerini had a puncture and was basically out of contention for the entire rest of Strade Bianche at the worst moment ever. So we don't know how far he would have gotten that. Eventually he ended up 17th, which wasn't real because then it apparently meant that Ballerini crossed the line 17th after skipping 3 sand sectors in Strade Bianche. So he just DNF'd. But I still think that his capabilities are very high. I think in Laigueglia, he also was pretty high up until we had an attack. I don't know who attacked. Was it?
Oh, he was there late. No, he was there late, and those are steeper climbs.
Yeah.
And that Tour de la Provence finish he won on stage 2 had steeper sections than anything on this. This is a gradual climb where a draft will be very important. That Provence stage, he was up there. He was the only sprinter up there, quote unquote sprinter, in a group with Ciccone, Jorgensen, Bernal, Moscon, and co. I think Ciccone came second. Dylan Terns was up there at the finish too. So that was a harder finish. This is a longer finish. Who do you think will take it up? Do you think Alpecin Phoenix will try lead out Van der Poel? Do you think Jumbo-Visma will try and set pace for Wout van Aert and drop the quote-unquote pure sprinters? Will this be hard enough, Benji, for Conrad, Almeida, Pogacar, or you don't think so?
I don't think it's going to be hard enough for Conrad, Almeida, and Pogacar. I also don't think that you need to go for Almeida if you got a Ballerini in the team there. I think it's going to be way too tough for the likes of Viviani. Sorry?
Alaphilippe.
He's like on the brink, but because he'll
can lead out Ballerini. I think it depends. If Ballerini's there, Alaphilippe will lead him out. I think.
Yeah, it's so difficult because
they got a great lead out, Benji.
But Alaphilippe is also going for GC, I would expect here, because there's only one mountain stage, and if he rode the same way that he did at Provence, he can top 3 GC.
True. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what Quickstep do tomorrow. They they have 3 riders that could potentially. Nah, Almeida probably won't win, but if it's a super hard climb, harder than it looks on paper, and it's ridden really hard, Alaphilippe can be up there on this finish. Probably wouldn't beat Van der Poel or Wout van Aert, though. But then if it's easier and they can do a great lead out with Asgreen, Stibar, and Van Leeuwenberg and Alaphilippe for Ballerini has a good chance for this stage as well. I think Wout van Aert won't really mind. And Van der Poel, like Wout van Aert and Van der Poel are not getting dropped on this climb. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, what about Ineos Benji? Kwiatkowski? No, he's not. I don't know. I think they're just going to be in damage conservation mode, like trying not to have Bernal get distanced. Garcia Cortina, I'm trying to find a dark horse.
Garcia Cortina would definitely be someone that I'd name a dark horse, but I haven't seen anything from him yet this season, so I don't know. Ciccone was close on that stage that you just mentioned from Ballerini in Provence, but Ciccone also isn't well known for his best sprint. I think he just had a great day that day, so he hasn't consistently performed sprinting at that level, I would say. And the other names I would think of when seeing this finish, it's Simon Clark for a top 5. He was good at Strade, something like that. He was one of the names I had in mind, but outside of that, it's kind of the chances are kind of slim, to be honest.
Say the name you want to say, Benji. Yes, there we go. I was like, there's no way he doesn't say Arambaru for an uphill finish.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. Arambaru, I mean, he's got to win eventually, hasn't he?
Feels bad, man.
2016 Nathan Haas. But also, what about this guy? He's pretty good rider. He's been good at Tirreno, good in uphill finishes, mixed terrain before in the last 20Ks. Peter Sagan.
I forgot he was here.
I think he's going to top 5. Minimum.
He wasn't amazing in the sprint today. I don't know what.
No, he wasn't far back, Benji. I know he came 11th, but he wasn't actually that far back. It was like a big bunch that he was in. He wasn't like that many wheels behind Wout van Aert and Ewan. That was what I found encouraging.
It's encouraging, but I've got so much difficulty with this whole COVID thing, with expecting somebody to be at a certain level afterwards. We saw Lutsenko be very inconsistent after his COVID. Gaviria as well. What, sorry?
That's just Lutsenko. I think that's just who he's always been.
That's kind of true. Yeah, I don't know.
It looks like Sagan to me. I'd love it. How good would it be? I really want this to happen. I want Sagan to win ahead of Wout van Aert and Van der Poel. Kind of like when, I'm not going to do another NBA analogy. Actually, Benji gets really confused by them. But yeah, just after all the hype he's heard about these two, Wout van Aert today, Van der Poel at Strade, if Sagan won, that would be so good. And good for the sport too, to have him back winning against top names as well. So I'd love to see it. But I think Wout van Aert or Van der Poel will be up there in this finish. It's tailor-made for those.
You got to choose, man.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Wout van Aert.
Van der Poel.
Oh, well, yeah. You're always going to go with the opposite to me. One of us is right, and everyone can say the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast correctly predicted the winner. But that looks like a fantastic stage for Tirreno Adriatico tomorrow. Maybe there's going to be someone attacking like Alaphilippe on the earlier climbs. I would love to see that as well. Maybe Alaphilippe attacks at the intermediate sprint about 15 Ks before the finish, a little climb up to Monticiano, trying to take some bonus seconds back as well. Could be a pretty exciting race. That was our Tirreno wrap.